Sorry about that.
I'm chairing the session. I just wanted to introduce everybody first. Just a quick update for panelists. If you keep your chat open, you can see the notes that Kelly will post in terms of timing. So that you can see how much time you have left. I think there was some confusion on that in the previous session. So I'm excited to get this going. We're running a little bit behind already, so we'll get started. So first off, we have actually Christopher Wilby.
Eric?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. Uh-oh, where'd she go? Who was that?
I heard a very...
That was Raquel Diaz Sprague.
Okay.
And she was echoing.
Yep. Okay, we'll keep moving. Raquel, if you have something, maybe type it in the question Q&A or chat. We'll get going with Christopher. So Christopher is from, Wilby is from Springer Humanities Books. I think many of you or all of you should have been contacted that we're putting together a collected volume of chapters based on this workshop. So I think this is a great opportunity. And we're excited. I think Elizabeth's working with Christopher on this. And so I think it's a great opportunity to further talk about, present some of all the work that everyone's doing. So I'll turn it over to Christopher. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's a pleasure to make everyone's acquaintance. Like I said, I know quite a few of you already, and I've already had the honor of working with both Elizabeth and Kelly on another project, and I'm looking forward to working on this one as well. This is just a general presentation that I've made, and just to highlight what Springer offers and what we can do. And I'll try to go through it as quickly as possible because I know there are time constraints. The agenda looks quite long, but I'll do my best to go through it as quickly as possible, so there's time for some questions if you have any at the end. So yeah, first of all, my name's Chris Wilby. I'm an associate editor. I work together with Floor Oasting, who's the executive editor of Humanities Books. I've worked with her for 9 years. We have a very close working relationship. So if ever there's any questions, either one of us will always be able to answer them. So first of all, what is Springer Nature? For those of you who don't know it, so Springer Nature is a Springer Nature group. It's the umbrella term, the umbrella company under which the company that I work for, Springer, falls. So it was created in 2015 following a merger between Macmillan Science and Education and Springer SBM. We have 3 divisions: research, education, and professional. We have, at this moment in time, we have around 13,000 colleagues and offices in more than 50 countries. And obviously, we're a globally operated company. Registered head office is in Berlin, in Germany. Furthermore, we provide well-developed responsible business strategy and reporting, as well as publishing journals and books in pretty much all formats. So this just to give you a global overview of where we're based. As you can see, predominantly in North America, Europe, and also Asia, Asia Pacific, and also in the southern parts of Africa. So we're pretty much everywhere, and we have locations everywhere for people to access. We have now, since that merger with Macmillan, we have a few new imprints as well, which we're quite proud of. So Springer Nature is the main one, and then we have obviously Springer, where I work. We also have Nature Research, the journals. We have Biomed Central, the Scientific American magazine, A-Press, Palgrave Macmillan, of course, and ADIS. So these are just, we have several more. We also have German language ones, Birkhauser, etc. But these are the main ones that for the international audience that we have. Well, I think most of you will probably know this, but we publish in all academic fields, so varying from astronomy to engineering and from statistics to medicine. And obviously we have a large portfolio in the humanities with in our religion and philosophy ebook package. So this just gives an overview of the topics that we publish on. So then we have the Humanities English Language Book Group. This consists basically of 2 parts of Springer Nature. So that's Palgrave Macmillan and Springer. We are one of the largest HSS publishers in the world, something that we're quite proud of. We're located in 9 locations. And in 2020, we had 3 ebook packages within the humanities and social sciences, within the humanities section. They're literature, culture, and media studies, philosophy and religion, and history. Today I'll be focusing not on Palgrave and Macmillan, but on Springer, because that is where I work. That's the imprint that I work for, and that is also the imprint that Kelly and Elizabeth and also Dina and some others have already worked with quite significantly in the past. So just to give you an idea of the diversity within the humanities book group and our most downloaded books, I've picked something from every type. So the first one is actually a major reference work that we did. It was the Handbook of Global Bioethics by the wonderful Henk ten Have and Bert Gordijn. We also have the International Library of Bioethics, so this is something that will definitely be of interest to the majority of the people here, of course. So one of the main best downloaded ones is on organ transplantation. We also have diverse books, which is the third one. So they're not part of a book series, but they're rather just standalone titles that don't fit within a series, but are still very much philosophical, ethical, or anything other related to humanities. And we also have here a book from What Makes Us Moral. So a very philosophical book by Bert Mushinga. So these are our most downloaded books in the most varied topics that we have, basically. We have a lot of series, so this just to show the breadth of the humanities books program that we have. So the first one again is the International Library of Bioethics. That's one edited by Dennis Cooley, who I'm quite close with and I've worked with for many years. We also have the second one is a fully open access book series. So every volume that comes out in that series is actually open access. That's Research for Policy. That is a book series that we do with the Dutch Research Council. And we also have philosophy of medicine, but also Synthese Library. We have undergraduate textbooks and graduate textbooks. We also do, well, as you can see in the outstanding contributions to logic, you can see that we also do these books that are dedicated to people who are very well known and renowned in the field. And just to show, we also have book series in law, archaeology, but also history, philosophy of science, everything basically in humanities. So it's a very broad books program that we have with various highly qualified colleagues working on them as editors. I also want to tell you something about open access. I'm sure you all know what it entails. So that means that open access is a publishing model for scholarly communication that makes research and information available to readers at no cost. There is a fee involved for the author or the editor of the volume. Usually that fee is paid for by funding, but it depends. There are various options. It's absolutely not a necessity, of course, but in case you're interested, there's an increased visibility, a greater understanding of research outside of the academic community, because basically everyone with an internet connection has access to the book. Obviously, maximize discoverability. Copyright always remains with the author through the CC BY license, and it facilitates interdisciplinary collaboration. What also might be of interest to you is that if you do not have funding to make a whole book open access, there's also a possibility of making individual chapters open access, which is also something which would make the book a hybrid book, which would also highlight the book more. If there's an open access chapter in it, it will trigger people's interest, etc. So the advantages are quite clear, of course. So it's 7 times more downloads, more citations, and more online mentions. That's something. And the next slide shows, for example, the effect that it can have. First one is Rethinking Causality. Is a diverse book that has accumulated 155,000 downloads in the past, I think, year now. Then we have Public Health Ethics. That is actually a book that we worked on with the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, from the World Health Organization, which is doing fantastically at 835. And one book that I've worked on, well, there must be about 9 years now, but it seems to be worth it, is the Managing Sustainable Business textbook, which has accumulated nearly 5 million downloads. So this is just as an indicator that open access can help. It's not, as I said, it's not a necessity, but it's something that I wanted to bring to your attention. So basically, how do we sell books? Again, I think most of you will know hard copies sales are on the decline. So they're still being sold and we still publish them. Every book is published in both hard copy, e-copy, regardless of how many we expect to sell. Our main way of distributing and disseminating our books is through ebook collections. So libraries, institutions, universities, they purchase our ebook collection, and anyone affiliated to a university that has access to the humanities, for example, ebook collection will have access to the book if you've published it with us. There are 4 different types that we have. So we have access and select. We have single titles, which people can purchase. We have reference modules. They consist of major reference works. And we have the more traditional collections. So then you purchase a university purchases the license for an ebook collection, for example, in religion and philosophy, which is a book that Elizabeth's and Kelly's book, yeah, that book will fall in within that ebook collection due to the topic, of course. We're always trying to innovate. I added this sheet knowingly, but also knowing that my knowledge of these things isn't that great. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. These are innovations that are being done by well, by management and by special designated teams in IT, etc. We're always working towards that. So the first one is auto translation, which basically just auto translates a book from we've done so from German to English. Then there's also the auto generation, that which is an artificial intelligence project that generates complete books. So we've done one on lithium batteries, which was the first book that we ever published through auto generation. It's something that's still being developed, and it's I'm not sure how that will work for humanities, to be quite honest. And the same goes for auto translation, because philosophy, the terminology, everything in it, it's quite hard to translate automatically. I think human interaction needs is human view of it is absolutely necessary in that case. One thing that I have done, and which is very interesting, is something new. It's called video publications. So they're basically like books, but basically what the author does is he or she films herself talking about a topic, and it's considered an official publication with its own DOI, ISBN, and we post that. So that's something that's quite interesting. Also in the humanities, and especially in the bioethics section, it's been quite a success. Obviously, artificial intelligence is being used more and more. Again, that's something that's quite technical and is not something that I'm very much involved in. But if you do have any questions about that, feel free to always reach out to me. And our continuous work towards carbon neutrality. At the moment, that's a lot easier than expected, due to the fact that we cannot travel to the office and we cannot travel to conferences like we're used to, which is very unfortunate. I suppose every cloud does have a silver lining, in the sense that it helps our carbon neutrality, but all our books are printed on recycled paper, and it's something that we're working towards. And green energy in the offices, all of our offices have that now. There was quite recently, there was an interesting article from our COO on this, on how we're working towards that. So it's something that we're quite proud of, and hope to develop even more. And to be honest, though, I do hope that we can go to conferences. Though I do love doing this, I prefer the in-person chats with authors and editors, as I think it's still important to continue that in the future. Well, this is something that I've always put in there. I think Elizabeth and Kelly both know how to do that. Should any other of you who are not involved in the project, or if you want to do another project simultaneously, if you want to submit a proposal, it's very easy. All you need to do is send Floor or myself an email stating your interest. If the topic seems of interest to us, we'll send you a form to fill out. We've done that with this book on STEM as well. Obviously, the topic was very interesting, and obviously, the editors of the volume, Kelly and Elizabeth, are two people that we value very much, and we know that they deliver good work as well. So we were happy to send them a form. We can do that through our online book proposal form or Word document. We would then ask you to fill that form out, send it back to us. In the case of a series, we'll have it reviewed by a series editor. In case it's a standalone title, we will have it reviewed externally by 2 reviewers who will usually turn it around quite quickly. Based on the positive response, we offer a publishing agreement, and work on the manuscript can start. So that's basically also what will happen with this project. Once the proposal has been finalized, we'll have it reviewed by a series editor or some external reviewers. Based on that, we'll sign an agreement. Each author or first named author of each chapter will fill in a consent to publish form, and that's how the process starts and continues. But if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. Yeah. Finally, last page, because I'm probably going over the time, and I'm going as quickly as I can, but why publish with Springer? Well, we have excellent services for book authors, editors. Online, we have experts ready and waiting for you to answer your questions, and we can help you with everything that you need. We have a wide dissemination of your work, obviously, as I explained, through the licenses. All books are published in 2 formats, hard copy and e-copy. On average, a Springer ebook receives 8,800 downloads in the first year of publication, showcasing the wide dissemination of the work, and approximately 4 citations during the first 4 years of publication. We have the option to publish open access for even wider dissemination, and we have the option to publish hybrid open access with just 1 or several chapters made open access. And something that is also very that I'm very into at the moment, I'm very interested in, and that Springer is focusing on, is a focus on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So if you ever have any questions about that, we have some designated series aimed at each of the 17 development goals. So these are some of the reasons that to publish with Springer. That is it. So I went through it quite quickly because I didn't want to go over the time, and I thought maybe some of you might have had some questions. Yeah, like I said, it was quite quick, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and or feel free to email me at any time, and I'll be more than happy to discuss either by email, phone, Zoom, or go to.
All right, thanks, Christopher. I would say kind of to keep on time, we have the Q&A session, the Q&A chat, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you have some things for Christopher in the meantime, maybe you can type them into the Q&A and we can move on with the next speaker. We still have the overall discussion at the end that all the speakers will be part of. So our next speakers are Louise Zeidenhout from the Institute of Science, Innovation and Society at the University of Oxford, and Emmanuel Ratti from the Institute of Philosophy and Scientific Method from the Johannes Kepler University Linz. And they're going to talk about what does it mean to embed ethics in data science, an integrative approach based on microethics and virtues. So I will turn it over to whoever's speaking first, but they have their slides ready to go. So it all.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Eric, and thank you for the, sorry, can you see my slides?
Yes,
yep, we can see it.
Sorry.
They're gone now, unfortunately. There they go.
Okay, so thank you very much for putting together this amazing workshop with a terrific lineup. So my name is Emmanuel Ratti. I work at Johannes Kepler University Linz, and this is a work done with Louise Zeidenhout that she's now moved to the University of Cape Town. And what we are going to do in this talk is to describe some of the ideas of some of the way we would like to conceptualize RCR training for data scientists specifically. We know that so RCR trainings have been around for a while, and what these various programs aim to achieve is to familiarize. So first of all, to familiarize researchers with common ethical issues related to their work, and second, they don't just want to let's say expose a researcher to these ethical issues, but they want also to train researchers in deliberating about these issues. And finally, a third goal, which is usually very important, is to basically tell or provide guidance to those affected by these ethical issues to where to go to seek help about all of this. And so institutions have a lot of flexibility in deciding how to structure this type of training, at least in the US. So we have, for instance, University of Pittsburgh, they have discussion-based hour-long workshop on RCR topic. Georgia Tech, they do a hybrid of online training as well as in-person educational session. And I mean, in general, also the founding bodies, they are pretty, let's say, vague, because the NIH requires at least 8 hours of training, and to my knowledge, the NSF does not. And so as other presentation in the previous session has also emphasized, there are some common problems with RCR training. And so, for instance, there is not clear exactly how we want to measure success of these programs, because in addition to, again, tell the researchers which are the ethical issues, it's also difficult to assess whether they have become skilled ethical decision makers. And sometimes they also lack institutional support because they might be seen as let's say, a compliance ritual, a checkbox that we have to do in order to use the money that we got from the NIH or the NSF. And so they may lack also motivated staff, and I think it's not even clear what a competent structure is from this point of view. And here we focus especially on RCR trainings and how RCR training can be conceptualized for data science. And we take data science training to be very broad, to include not only students in computer science or dedicated program of data science, but in general, any student that is relying, or researcher that is relying on intense computational tools, intense computational work or infrastructure for their research. So, so data science is a newcomer in scientific research, and it has been observed and convincingly shown that data science raises a lot of ethical issues, and ethical problems have been identified, for instance, in the data set that are chosen to train an algorithm, in the way data are prepared, in the way they are modeled, in the way they are visualized, in the way the models are applied, and so on and so forth. And so in our understanding, there is really like a strict connection between technical choices and ethical issues, in the sense that many of the technical decisions made by data scientists may also imply ethical choices, because they are the result of value judgment, which may involve also ethical and social values. And in other work that I'm doing with Mark Graves, who is a data scientist working in a private company, we are kind of, let's say, decomposing the data science process, and we found that in each of the technical operation of the data science process, there are increasingly, let's say, many ethical issues. And so it seems that in addition to the problems that we have identified in the previous slide of RCR trainings, I think that there is also a lack of connection between the practice of science and the ethical issues. And so that's why we think that current RCR trainings cannot make sense of this meaningful connection between the two. And I think that's why also many scholars have been shifting to sort of, let's say, embedded ethics approaches, because they realize that it's important to have this connection between practice of data science and ethical issues. And the data science process, understood as this process decomposable in repetitive discrete tasks, offers a great environment for ethical training, we think. So rather than thinking about issues of research, for instance, of research misconduct in general, with no clear views on where in practice they arise, we can analyze, in the case of data science, where in each of the discrete and repetitive steps of the data science process, these ethical issues emerge. So, so that's why we think that it should reflect this micro-task nature of data science. And that's why it's a microethics, our own approach. There is emphasis on the small daily technical acts of data scientists and their ethical relevance. And so, and how basically all these operations in the schema can also reflect ethical decision. And so our microethics is realized through ethical exercises, which aim at fostering the cultivation of moral abilities, which we understood as virtues in the virtue theory tradition, so that data scientists can become more independent or more autonomous in their ethical deliberation. And these exercises create a strict connection between the practice of science, of data science and ethics, and that's why ethics should not be external to the practice. So, sorry, that ethics is not external to the practice. So, and for instance, this diagram here outlines data science practice, and while the outputs may be different between projects, there are a number of repetitive microtasks, such as data analysis, coding, visualization, and so forth, that are common between projects. And the execution of this microtask is influenced by advice from mentors and peers in the forms of community forums and also colleagues. But it's not just about microtask, because the structure of discrete and repetitive microtasks makes it very possible to restructure training to be oriented towards virtue acquisition and the acquisition of these moral abilities. And virtues are acquired through contextually appropriate repeated action that are modeled on the behavior of exemplars. So it is therefore important to critically scrutinize three elements of daily data science practice, which are, again, the microtask, but also the influence of the institution, and in particular, the research context or the research environment, and the availability of mentors. So that's why there are several steps in our let's say, training. And so first of all, it is important to have a general understanding of what ethics and virtue or moral abilities may possibly be. And part of the training then can be fulfilled by having 1 or 2 sessions describing what these things are. But it's also important to understand how those concepts about ethics and virtues are connected to technical decisions in the data science environment. So what is the relation between microtask and virtues or vicious behavior? And third, it is important to emphasize that this microtask and how they foster virtual vices will depend on specific work environment. And so that's why we need also an analysis of the particular context in which we do data science. And once we have understood how the specific environment in which we work shape microtasking in an ethical direction rather than another, we can think about resilient strategies to foster a more virtuous behavior. And finally, then it is important also to identify mentors. So now I'm going to leave the floor to Louise, who she will explain more in detail what these exercises are and how exactly our training work. Thank you.
So thanks, Emanuela, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Good evening from Cape Town. Next slide, please, Manny. Yeah, so as Emanuela said, we've come up with this idea of microtasking ethics, and we've started implementing it through our involvement in a network of summer schools called the CoData RDA Schools for Research Data Science. And it's important to recognize what we're aiming in this approach is not just to instill responsible conduct of research amongst the data scientists that we're training, but we're trying to foster virtuous data scientists to give them an understanding of virtues embedded in data systems and how they can enact ethically robust digital futures. And this includes being aware of how the small decisions that they make in their daily practice affect the design of systems. And we anticipate that virtuous data scientists will be able to actively attempt to minimize any biases in these systems that they are designing, working in, or observing. And while this is, of course, good for building ethically robust data systems, the potential of influence goes way beyond the design of the systems. By inculcating virtues in these systems, it may be possible to influence the end users and kind of nudge them towards ethical behavior. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about how Emanuela and I have started thinking through this and implementing it in the schools through microethics training. So as Emanuela said, we open up the schools with an introduction to ethics and virtues. And this is usually through a series of more formal lectures. But then our students go forward to engage in a range of activities that are linked specifically to the daily microtasks that they undertake. So the first step is to encourage the students to break down their daily work into a series of microtasks. And as Emanuela mentioned, this could include writing data analysis code, doing data visualizations, managing data curation, and so forth. And for the sake of this presentation, I'm just going to be focusing on data visualization. So you'll see the table below. Students are asked to fill the table in, thinking about their microtasks, but then also thinking about what would happen if they either do not complete the task adequately, either by not trying or by trying too hard. And those of you who are familiar with virtue ethics will recognize that this exercise raises awareness not only of the virtues, but also the vices of omission and commission, and the importance of finding balance in your work. Through this table, we're starting a discussion not only about virtues, but also about vicious behavior and the importance of finding the virtuous mean within the daily activities. And the next step is to link these microtasks to specific virtues. Next slide, please. So then the students move on to another table where they use the list of virtues that you just saw to link the virtues and vices to each microtask. And this enables them to see not only how the microtasks have ethical import, but also how the mindful execution of these microtasks can lead to character development and virtue acquisition. In addition, it also highlights how failing to be mindful of the execution of these microtasks can lead to vicious behaviors that can have wider implications. So while it's important for our students to understand how virtues are associated with microtasks, as Emanuela said, it's also vital that they realize the contextuality of their behavior. And what may be virtuous in one setting may not necessarily be the same in other settings. And in order to foster this awareness amongst students, we work hard to get them to understand and break down their institutional contexts. To do this, we use a framework that was developed by Eleanor Ostrom called the Framework for Institutional Analysis and Development. You'll see the schematic diagram on the left. This framework provides a means of critically appraising the physical, social, and regulatory structures of individual institutions. The table on the right is a very small section of a broader table that breaks down the IAD into the subcategories. And it enables the students to identify the different features of their institution. So next slide, please. So the final element of the microtasking training is to pull it all together in a reference table that students can take forward and use as they go forward in their microtasking. The table organizes all the issues identified in the previous exercises and brainstorms ways in which they can optimize their virtuous behavior. So as you'll see, column 1 identifies the elements from the institution that might affect the execution of microtasks in a virtuous manner. And column 3 gets the students to be cognizant of what behaviors might arise from these institutional pressures. Nonetheless, as Emanuela said, we're aiming to build ethical resilience amongst the students. So column 4 and 5 are very important because it gets the students to identify mitigation strategies and resources that they can draw on to support themselves through their professional journey and through their daily microtasking. And the picture on the right is a group version of this exercise that was run at one of our CoData RDA summer schools, where this curriculum originates from. And as you can see, the students were brainstorming not only the challenges that they would have implementing virtuous behavior in their microtasks, but also trying to identify some of the resources that they could draw on to avoid slipping into these vicious behaviors. Next slide, please. So I hope that that very whistle-stop tour will give you an understanding of the way that Emanuela and I have been thinking, trying to link ethics to a subject that is not necessarily normally identified as a locus for widespread ethics training. And we're hoping that by breaking it down into microtasks, we can get the students to see that every single action that they take has ethical import and has implications that go beyond their own work. So our curriculum, as we said, exploits the compartmentalized and aggregate structure of data science training and practice. And we think it offers a new way of introducing ethics training into data science by linking it to virtues and microtasks, rather than just giving the students a big picture understanding of things like algorithmic bias and AI and machine learning. The curriculum evolved not only through the discussions Emanuela and I have had, but also through the training we've been doing on open and responsible research within the CoData RDA schools for data science. And we've already had a really good response from students coming from many disciplines on these schools, showing the potential for expansion. And we think providing perhaps a new and exciting way of introducing ethics topics to data science. So on that note, we'll both say thank you very much for having us here. If you would like to know more about the summer schools, you can see the link on the slide. And if you'd like to read a paper where Emanuela and I go into a bit more detail about the thinking behind this curriculum, you can follow the link below. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I really do love the focus on microtasks and how that influences the bigger picture. So I look forward to our discussion with the whole panel after we get through the other talks. So we will move forward into our next talk. It's from the Department of Electrical and Computing Engineering, the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Alan Sprague and Raquel Diaz Sprague. They are also embedding. So this is embedding moral reasoning and teamwork training in computer science and electrical engineering. So I'll turn it over to you guys, all of you.
Okay, we have to unmute.
Just a minute. Are we mute at this time or are we unmute?
No, we can hear you. You're
We
fine.
can hear you.
Okay, well, sorry for our delay here. We are having technical problems. We apologize. Our PowerPoint did not upload correctly. So we're sorry, but we're just going to narrate in a conversational manner what we wrote for this presentation. Thank you, everybody, for being tuned in. We appreciate your time. My name is Raquel Diaz Sprague, and I am with Alan Sprague. We'll be talking on embedding ethics and teamwork in computer science. And I'll begin by saying a little bit about us in our collaboration. We're obviously very different trainings and backgrounds. Alan is a professor of computer science, and he retired from the University of Alabama at Birmingham in 2017. And we've been engaged in collaborative research before that. And I am a former medical humanities instructor at the Ohio State University, where Alan formerly taught mathematics. He is a mathematician by training, and I am a pharmacist by training. So we are life partners. We have 3 grown kids and 3 grandkids, and we have collaborated in mostly outreach projects, but since about 6 years or so, also in academic projects. And I'll begin by telling a little bit about our collaboration academically. Alan teaches data mining and data science, and he has a lot of research on that area. In particular, is studying spam patterns and rules of classification and that sort of thing. And I was interested in the aggressive language in social media, which we see so much being a common problem with kids that just get the first phone and they use it for some nasty messages exchanged with their friends. And we thought about using data mining to detect aggressive language, nastiness within social media text, so that perhaps there could be an app that the parents could install and deter the kids from using that kind of language. That's what got us started. So we wrote a paper for detecting cyberbullying, presented it at the CP, the Computer Engineering and Philosophy Inquiry conference in Paris in 2014. And from then on, we've been collaborating with other professors of natural language processing into finding ways to effectively detect aggressive language and perhaps flag it and deter teams from presenting such things. So this led to me being invited to be a visiting scholar at the University of Alabama Computer Science Department in 2015. And we also taught together the capstone course, the course that seniors take, and that involves developing a software engineering project. We thought that since they have to do a project, rather than creating kind of a gimmick, a game or something, we challenged them to develop a pro-social app, some kind of app that would help them with moral guidance or with moral confusion. What is the right thing to do? What is the right way to communicate? So we challenged them in 2016, and this has developed into a whole contest, what we call the Ethics in Action Challenge, Art or App Design Challenge. And the students are invited to submit ideas for artwork or app concepts that will be useful to them at moments when they need guidance to do the right thing. And we're in that process where since 2019, it's been a slow going. Some students are confused about what it is and whether they can participate, but it's really open to all. It's open to any undergraduate student all over the country and worldwide. We want ideas, pro-social ideas. In addition to this Ethics in Action Challenge, which is current and ongoing, we also developed a mini module, a short mini module to embed ethics and teamwork training in the curriculum of the capstone course or courses like that, where students will be asked to collaborate, and there is sometimes an ill-prepared for collaboration and have maybe some kind of a moral confusion about what's the right thing to do when you're in a group of 7 or so students and there's a project to be done. So the University of Alabama provide us a grant, unrestricted, to do research on effective ways to teach ethics and teamwork in courses that involve teamwork. And we have a 4-class period mini module that has been tested successfully at the electrical engineering and computing department for students that take a upper level class that involves design and teamwork. And so I will turn it over to my partner here to explain what the mini module consists of and what our results have been.
Okay, it's a 4-class period mini module. The first 2 class periods are a moral refresher, and the last 2 are demonstrating teamwork. The first one, the first class period, the students watched Harvard EDX video, Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do by Michael Sandel. This was followed by a class discussion. Second class period, the students watched a TED lecture by Franz de Waal on animal morality. It's an 18-minute, that's an 18-minute lecture. It shows several animal species engaging in collaborative work. In particular, it shows capuchin monkeys, which have a clear sense of fairness, and they reject unfairness in very decisive ways. Fairness and reciprocity are pillars of morality, essential for teamwork. And that is what can be seen from the animals, and capuchin monkeys in particular. And well, students then engage in discussion following that 18-minute discussion. Then class periods 3 and 4, the students had a choice, either to develop a PowerPoint presentation on some aspect of teamwork, or what almost all of them did instead was to choose a game found on the web that would foster teamwork. And then present that game to the remaining of the class, and then the other teams would play that game. Examples of games, obstacle course for the blind is one. That is a team playing this. One person would be blindfolded, and the remaining people in that team would give that person verbal cues to guide him through the maze. Card towers, this one especially, thinking outside the box is an aspect of this one. They take playing cards and try to set them on edge, which they're very unstable at, and try to form a tower as high as they can. And the hula hoops were involved in another one of the games. The discussions were highly animated. The student written responses to questionnaire at the end showed a reflective side. So it appeared that they were taking up what we were presenting. A friendly competitive atmosphere during the games. And we didn't observe any net teamwork failures in that class page. Okay, and I believe that what we're turning to now is Raquel again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Alan. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about some of the ideas that the students presented for their project. And for example, in 2016, we had a group that created Word is a Matter, an app that detected profanity, foul words on text and flagged them. And when they flagged the message, also the app provided a pop-up, and that pop-up said, "Are you sure you want to send this?" And suggested alternative, more polite wording. In 2017, we had one app that was called Kindness is Cool. Kindness is Cool, and provided examples of small acts of kindness that you can make during your everyday interactions. And then in 2019, we had a student created a collaboration tree featuring little monkeys. It was really a cute artwork, which I wish I could show you. We had student also in the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa developed a logical food pantry and a streamlined version of a kind of a inventory control and volunteer scheduling to aid organizations that help the homeless to control their supplies and their volunteer people. So those are all pro-social ideas that the students came up with, and we hope for more. We think that it's important to do ethics and pro-social development of software engineering because they have to do software engineering anyway. And oftentimes they spend all this effort in creating new games, how to play this or that. And games are fine, but I think we're missing something important. We are missing, I think, in our educational system, there are gaps in what we know and what we teach. And we live in a time of hope, but also fear, especially in our relationships with one another and as global citizens of one small planet. And I think we might be missing something important in general in our whole educational system. And as we learn with dismay from our research on cyberbullying, which involved us collecting a lot of social media texts from a lot of teenagers. I mean, we're talking about 100,000 text messages. The language, the vulgarity, the sentiments expressed were kind of dismaying, in fact. So we believe that we are slipping in quality of life in terms of an orderly, polite society with broad empathy and compassion for the vulnerable and with utmost respect for the dignity of each and every person. So we think we need software for the soul. We constantly update the software of our technologies and our gadgets. We understand that they become obsolete and that they need updating. But what about the operating systems of our minds? What about the software of the soul? To that effort, software for the soul, we are dedicated. And we ask that all of you invite your students to collaborate in the Ethics in Action Challenge, to participate. It is open to all. And we hope that to the end of having updated and upgrading the nation's software of the soul, we can make progress. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So I particularly appreciate the emphasis on compassion and dignity that you talk about. And if you guys could share at some point the link to the ethics competition or activity, I think that'd be great to share with everyone. All right. So to keep us going, we'll move to the next speakers. And as you know, we have time afterwards for questions to the whole crew. So our next speakers are from the School of Computing and Information Systems, the Center for AI and Digital Ethics, the University of Melbourne in Australia. This is Mark Chung, Kobe Leans, and Simon Coughlin, and they're going to present Digest: How Ethics Can Spearhead Digital Ethics Education in a Computing Environment. So maybe Mark, I see you. I don't know who's going first. Go right ahead.
I'll quickly share my screen. And is that working for everyone?
Yep, we can see it.
Yep, cool. Thanks, Eric, for the warm introduction, and thanks to Kelly and the team for organizing this workshop. Unfortunately, due to time zone differences, Simon and Kobe send their apologies because it's like close to 5-6 a.m. here, so I'm the only one presenting on behalf of the team. So basically, it's a joint effort, it's a team effort, but any errors or omissions are strictly mine. And I hope I can do the whole team justice by presenting this. So my name's Mark, and this is basically our experience in teaching digital ethics in the computing department. So it's more of like our experiences plus some war stories attached to it. So it's an interesting roller coaster ride. So, yep, I shall begin. And first of all, I'd like to thank the previous speakers. I really, really empathize with the contents of your presentations. That's exactly what we see. And I'll just try to put some references in where we, as a team, found it really difficult to connect like certain students of certain disciplines in IT. So, yep, I'll try to tie it back to your presentations as well. Okay. First, just a quick acknowledgement of country. Our team is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people who have been custodians of this land for thousands of years, and acknowledge and pay our respects to their elders past and present. So that's me on the right with the copy of the ACM code at the back. This is a really old picture. So yep, this is hopefully a good picture to tie in the message. We need ethics in computing. Kobe's on the left and Simon's in the middle. So Kobe's expertise is in law, especially cyber law. Simon is an expert. His background is in bioethics, but he's an expert in things like human-computer interaction and even animal-computer interaction and the ethics behind it. For me, my background is I'm a computer scientist. I did my PhD on social network analysis. but I increasingly did more philosophy, so much so that now my main forte is existentialist philosophy, and I've done some work in ethics as well. And one interesting point to note, when last year when we proposed this, just to write our experiences in this workshop talk, we were just helping educators to incorporate digital ethics into their units. We didn't teach a full ethics course, but this year some of us are teaching into an ethics course. So part of the challenge is the logistics, how to get our fellow lecturers to get buy-in for ethics. How do we encourage them to talk to their students about ethics? So I think that's the main challenge. So from our perspective, we're doing this as a service to the department. Hey, just a brief outline. 3 main parts. The first part being ethics in tech. I think I'm preaching to the choir. Everyone knows this, but just some perceptions of our fellow educators, of the students. Why do we need digital ethics? You look at the news. Gebru has been fired from Google for speaking out. That's one facet of digital ethics. And real Donald Trump, permanent suspension. We all know why. And that speaks to the role of social media companies. What ethical decisions they have to make. As a profession, we have the ACM Code of Conduct, the IEEE Code of Conduct. How do we get students to appreciate these when they go into the workforce? And as a research topic in itself. So example papers at ACM's FACT conference, which is fairness, accountability, and transparency. And also in terms of basic undergraduate degrees, students now appreciate ethics because what they're doing would change the future. Don't forget there's intrinsic value in ethics. So that's part 1. Part 2 can be summarized with 3 A's. How do we appeal to students? How do we fulfill accreditation needs because courses in Australia are accredited? And the third part is the actual logistics, i.e. the war stories. And the final part is just lessons learned, things we think we can do better, things we would like to share with other people. So hopefully that will help. And yep, that's pretty much a 3-part talk. I'm 5 minutes in, all good for time. So ethics in tech, I'll just briefly skim through this section. Again, I'm preaching to the choir. Everyone knows that ethics is really important, but this is how we convince students and our fellow educators is important. So on the left, it's just screenshots of the ACM Code of Ethics and Mozilla's document on with great tech comes great responsibility. I think students are beginning to appreciate the fact that we need ethics in the development and consumption of technologies. On the right, examples mentioned before, Google's firing of Timnit Gebru and the permanent suspension of @real Donald Trump, so no more Kofifi tweets in the morning. And starting from the academy, 2 important talking points to note. Firstly, as I mentioned, accreditation. Courses in Australia must be accredited by, for example, the Australian Computer Society, and there are certain requirements that ethics education is included in units from computer science to information systems, etc. And also, the screenshots on top indicate that how ethics can actually be an agent for change in changing the landscape of computing research. So from the statistics shown, we see that areas such as, let's say, deep learning, deep neural networks is essentially a boys' club. How can we diversify it to have a diverse range of genders? How do we make it more diverse in, for example, ethnic backgrounds, the backgrounds of the students, just to make it a melting pot of a vibrant academic community. So the paper on the top left is how my colleague Simon and ourselves, we use ethics of care to promote diverse voices by showing that we need to have more diversity in CS. So again, just simple examples, and I think students appreciate that. Students probably would not know, but our colleagues, fellow lecturers would know that accreditation is required. They have to include some sort of ethics education in their units. And students would know that based on examples from here in the top portion of this slide, that, yep, ethics is important somehow, but how? We don't know why. This is probably what goes on through students' minds. So how should we do it? Three ethicists walk into a bar. We have a team of three. Couldn't resist throwing the joke in, sorry. Ethics would be construed by some academics as in the domain of philosophers, Immanuel Kant, Philippa Foot, the trolley problem, utilitarian ethics, and so forth. But engineers, techies, CS majors want to build or invent. So they prefer data frames to deontological ethics. Another joke there. So philosophy is important, tech is important, and the legal aspects are important. That's why our team is multidisciplinary. Sorry, I just double check the chat. Oh, sorry. Yep. 8 minutes. Yep. All good. So different accreditation requirements are different for each subfield, each degree, or each diploma degree we're offering. For example, software engineers have their course accredited differently to information systems because the requirements are different. Second of all, if we were to help build ethics materials for certain subjects, like for example, data science for beginners, data science 101 versus factors in human-computer interaction, we need to tailor it to the target audience. An example here would be talking about model bias is really good for data science students, but not so interesting for human-computer interaction students. So how do we solve this? And the third point is actual logistics. This is important because students probably won't want to relearn the same things. And if, for example, let's say a lecturer reuses that material across the units they teach, then students would be potentially seeing it twice in their whole journey through the course, which is not what we want. Again, we don't treat computing as a behemoth. We acknowledge that there are certain subfields which require us to handle ethics in a different way. Okay, accreditation, just a quick snapshot. As you can see, this is a screenshot from the Australian Computer Society, or ACS. Accreditation examines discipline-specific criteria. So teaching ethics in different disciplines would require some nuance. And as I mentioned before, what if a lecturer ends up implementing a module of ethics in their subject, but somehow accidentally repeats it in a later iteration of the unit? Students can potentially see it twice based on their course progression if they take another same unit from the same professor, for example. And also, this is the key issue during the COVID pandemic. At the start, we moved to an online work mode, so the virtual campus initiative, professional staff workloads have increased. Do we add extra work to them for things like video editing of the lecture materials and so on and so forth? How do we host it? Again, we're just doing a service to the department. We have to think about all these things to incorporate. So how many SharePoints, intranet pages, Slack, Teams channels, how do we get it out there? Or is it just going to be Groundhog Day all over again? So how did we do it? As mentioned before, we don't want to assume that we know what, let's say, data scientists want versus what human-computer interaction engineers want. So we asked the academics, the lecturers, what they wanted. For those trying out adding ethics to the syllabus for the very first time, good on them. We identify what needs they have, what case studies are good to add discussion on ethics, maybe even some philosophy in it, or legal implications of major cases like the Boeing 737 MAX, including especially how it weaves into their assignment regime. So their weekly plan, if they have an essay, how we can make that essay, let's say an essay incorporating ethics. If there's a presentation, how can we incorporate parts of, let's say, ethical conduct in an analysis of a case study, for example. Again, it links to all the topics that were covered by previous presenters. How do we introduce this for just so many degree offerings or course offerings? So as a good start, again, during COVID, what we did was we hosted Q&A sessions for the students, which seemed to get a lot of attention, and students actually appreciate this because we tailor our discussion based on what the students want. There's no prepared slides beforehand, but they still need to see something to get used to, for example, key ethical principles from philosophy. So we still had to record video lectures, but that's the story for a couple of slides down. And accreditation, again, depending on the subject matter expert, is always the best move because the professors know their class more than we do. Collaborative partnership is formed. They tell us what they want. We create the content drawing upon our expertise. So actual logistics, this is where the war stories are. Hopefully there'll be some lessons that I can share. Don't repeat the same things we did. We work from home, Zoom recordings, great. We don't have to drive to the office, but we can't really have an open discussion or even a flipped classroom or even an interactive workshop with the students. So the best we came up with is ethics chats similar to the fireside chats from FDR, but with the three of us. We just take turns discussing a main issue that professors have prepared for us, and we just bounce ideas off each other. It's more organic, totally unscripted. We have the videos. Now what? We have a project officer, Gabby Bush, credits to Gabby, who helped us out in her spare time to just format the videos, just trim out the parts where there's awkward silences, packaged up, recompress everything so it's easily streamable. Works for 1 or 2 small videos, does not scale up. How do we manage the production cycle? How should we manage it? In future, we have to use the recording system more judiciously to reduce gaps or reduce the need for outtakes. Zoom has this excellent pause function that you can pause a recording. Optimization. Besides just helping the professors prepare ethics material, we also have to be the post-production people. So with Steven Spielberg plus Michael Bay, but without the fancy explosions or animations or Transformers. We use iMovie, that's free with every Mac, but we have problems with file sizes. Again, these are things we did not know beforehand. So lucky we have community at practice at the university. We have a Slack channel with educators, and we just learned some basic FFmpeg commands to compress them. Again, a couple of them is all you need. How do we host and manage dissemination of the videos? The professional admin staff are too busy because their workloads have increased during COVID. So lucky we took advantage of our uni's SharePoint site, but if your college does not have one, even Dropbox, a centralized university-sponsored Google Drive or OneDrive would work as well. But with one key caveat, we let the professors gain access to the material to share with them, but after they've run it past us. So again, to avoid the overlapping issue where they just reuse our content and students just get bored of the same content year in, year out, which ultimately defeats the purpose of the lecture library. So as mentioned, we have a Q&A, a fireside chat, a Q&A to accompany the recorded fireside chat. And here we are. So key takeaways and war stories. I think I have just 1 minute. Ethics education is increasingly important in STEM fields. Again, I'm preaching to the choir. COVID-19 changed the way everything is. Professors want to include ethics education in their units, find it hard. And as a service to the department, us researchers try to make it as seamless as possible. And we got through this by just experimenting and making use of institutional infrastructure to support this. And the 3 A's are really important. We're all making a difference. Doesn't hurt to try new technologies. And that's it. I think spot on 15 minutes.
Nice job. Thank you very much. I appreciate the mention of COVID and the discussion of at least some of those challenges that face there, because I feel I'm a department chair. So recognizing some of the things that this has created challenges as we implement new ideas and old ideas and everything on faculty and everyone, the burden is significant. All right, so all of our speakers are complete. So this is open to questions. You can raise a hand, you can type something in the Q&A or put it in the chat, whatever floats your boat. If you pause for a little bit, I have lots of questions, so I can go. All right, I'll get started. My questions to everybody, but maybe I'll start with the first group with their micro tasks. This was mentioned a little bit throughout, is the question of how do you engage students or the trainees to recognize that it's important, right? I think they're often really good at thinking about the big picture because that's very exciting, but kind of these day-to-day decisions have a huge impact down the line, right? And so I think that's the right way to go about it. But can you talk a little bit about how you were able to, or challenges you had around getting the trainees to see that this was an important part of the bigger picture? Sometimes that, they don't see that, or I feel like they don't see that aspect. So anything you guys can let us know about that.
Manuela, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just speak about our experience teaching on the summer schools. The summer schools are based on the data carpentry structure. So each each day, the students learn a specific data science tool like R or SQL or data visualization or so forth. And what we do throughout the course is to run an ethics discussion after the specific tool that links the tool to a specific ethics question. So for example, for GitHub is currently blocked to users in countries that the US holds sanctions against. So we just raise that at the end of the class and say, you know, is this something that we should be thinking about? Is this something that you would think about when you were thinking about sharing your code on GitHub? And that really gets the students thinking about how these specific tools relate to the bigger ethical picture. And it sets the scene for these micro task exercises that we do towards the end of the summer school. So by engaging the students with manageable ethics questions related to specific data science tools, it helps them to actually conceptualize and sets the scene for discussions about microtasking afterwards.
Brilliant, thanks. I don't know if Mark or Alan and Raquel have anything to add. I think, you know, the pro-social sounds great with the UAB project, but I can imagine also sometimes the students are struggling with maybe some of them trying to figure out, I'm a data scientist or computer engineer, why do I need to do this? Did you see that at all?
We try to make it part. Oh, something's wrong. Okay. Something is wrong. Our computer, I'm sorry, we apologize. We apologize.
You're muted.
I think they have to mute one of the two computers so that it doesn't.
Yeah, I think so too. But
okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Our approach was they have to do the software engineering project for the course. They have to do a team project. So we suggest that this is something that is important, and we tell them about, you know, the fact that we have a problem with our world, and that they could choose of these ideas or that, and they could go from simple to, you know, complex, and just give us a concept, not necessarily have a working up, but a concept. That is also for the contest. They don't have to have something working. They just have to have developed the app concept in such a way that it could be feasible to do at some later point. It has to have logic. So we tell them that since they have to spend time designing a project, they could choose to design from our project. And I don't think everybody, at least at about half or 45% of the students are interested. The rest of them just want to do something easy that someone else has done, or, you know, just a kind of a something not involving new thinking. But there is a sizable group that will take the time, and we are very gratified to see that.
Yeah, I would say 50% is a is a good number, but I'll move to, we've got a question in the chat.
So sorry, can I also add something?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I mean, so before working for Johannes Kepler University, I was working at the University of Notre Dame, and I taught this course on data ethics, but it was a traditional type of, let's say, ethical course in which you kind of, let's say, teach the big pictures. But I remember so quite vividly that I had several students from the engineering school, because it was a philosophy requirements that all the students had to take. And so especially when we were discussing some interesting cases in healthcare data science, for instance, like the algorithm that was just, let's say, badly designed, and so he scored like as very low risk some African American individuals who were in fact actually very bad, because they used health expenditure as a proxy, let's say, to identify those who are high risk. And so I just noticed that they were kind of, let's say, very eager to know the technical details on how exactly all the procedure, all the training of the algorithm actually lead to something really bad. So apart from discussing like this let's say high level so principle of justice, algorithmic bias, they were genuinely interested and naturally interested in understanding exactly what happened at the technical level and what really went wrong, and how and what we can do actually to improve, let's say, so sort of, let's say, positive feedback mechanism that allow data scientists to be more attentive to all these issues.
That's brilliant. So linking it to the technical is really important, certainly from that standpoint. All right, we got a couple questions in, so I'll get move on to the questions. So question for Emmanuel and Louise. This is a long question, so I'll try to get it right. Really enjoyed this approach. I was wondering, have you applied or would you extend your approach to institutions as well? For example, to allow department or university leaders, not just students, to reflect on their institutional virtues and vices. That seems potentially consistent with a multi-level IAD approach that recognizes the rules, resources, constraints relevant to ethical practice from all levels, that they come from all levels.
Yeah. So thanks, Daniel, for the question. It's really interesting and actually a very clairvoyant, because that's something we've been thinking about a lot. So the summer school started out as a multinational school that was hosted in Italy every year. But we have since evolved into doing regional schools where institutions host us, and we do schools that have a more consistent group of students. So on two levels, your question really taps in. What we've seen from the Trieste schools, where individual students are coming to the schools, is that they have come back and contacted us afterwards and asked us how they would run discussion groups within their own institutions to start talking about the barriers that they're facing in their institutions and the problems that they're having in acting ethically. But what we've also seen with the more regional schools is that the institutions that have been hosting us have been very interested in this process and have started thinking about it and thinking about how to apply it in their departments. Specifically, the University of Pretoria and the University of Cape Town in South Africa are starting to think how they would embed this in their curriculums and starting to talk about it with their staff. So we're definitely seeing a penetrance from our teaching into the broader institutions, which is very encouraging.
And so I think it's pretty unique because so there are other embedded ethics program for data science around the world, especially in the US. There is Harvard, and then I think they have something at the MIT, and they are really, let's say, focused on teaching to students. But I'm not aware of any initiative to bring this to the next level, because it would be very interesting. So, I mean, for instance, just to make an example, so again, my previous experience at the University of Notre Dame, now they have this technology ethics center. But it's interesting that okay, so they want to be, so in general, they say we want to be like very critical also of how like these big corporations like Amazon or Google or whatever, so they are let's say doing things. And however, for instance, there are many universities that use like Google Suite as a way, let's say, to host emails and other things. So how exactly do we make sure that these things are done in the right way? Or for instance, I don't know. So some university have also used like IBM Watson to gather data about the health conditions of people working in this institution during the COVID. So in order to, let's say, have an understanding of how the institution was doing from that point of view. So that's another question that one can ask to administrators exactly. What are your, let's say, ethical safeguards, and did you think through all this process when you decided, let's say, to basically, let's say, give over all this data to these big corporations? So that's something there is definitely, let's say, there is a lot to do, and I don't think that there are many administrators around that are willing to undergo this process in the same way students are, I think.
So Juhi, I promise I'll come back to your question, but I want to give Mark a chance. So I'll go to the next question, then come back. So Mark, you said that you asked data scientists what they wanted. So did they feel a need to add ethics to their courses, or did you somehow raise their interest?
Thanks, Eric and Elizabeth, for the question. So the answer is, luckily for us, it's both actually. So some professors or lecturers find the need to put ethics in your courses to make it more relevant and more appealing to the students. And some actually to comply with, for example, changing things like changing curricula, which they are required to implement. And I think preparing for a couple of units just from memory, interest from rest of the teaching staff followed afterwards, because they know, okay, so the ethics team, like the three of us have been doing these things. So I was just wondering if they can have the same thing for our courses. So I think it started with capstone projects actually. And it's actually quite surprising and interesting as well to go in. We just prepared like an introductory video on a key topic. We go in and have a live Q&A over Zoom, of course, during COVID. The students actually start engaging us by linking the topics we cover with their own projects. And the good news is we're talking on their terms, which is really nice. Else, the last thing we want is for them to zone out and say, is this something we have to cover to get a few points to our grade? But no, it seems to be quite promising. And yep, after a few of these lectures and guest appearances, other lecturers has followed suit, which is good news.
That's brilliant. I think the last two answers both relate to how starting something at the student level can grow and have, increase the impact. So the students have the interest. I think, as an administrator myself, we may come along over time. So that's a great opportunity. So back to the question from Juhi is, for the first group, so that's Louise and Emmanuel, in what ways do you find that students are changing the way they approach, think about their microtask design process as a result of your approach?
Emanuela, do you want me to go for that as well?
Yes, but I want to add something after.
Okay. I think one of the strengths about the microtask approach is that it allows the students to feel agency in their enactment of ethics, that they feel that there are small things that they can change that actually do make a difference. And we've seen very positive responses with the students, particularly around things like free and open source software, committing to using free and open source software, sharing code, trying to think about alternatives to restrictive sharing avenues like GitHub to make sure that their peers are included in countries that wouldn't have access to GitHub. Thinking about engaging in community forums and being a sharer of expertise as well as just of resources, and then particularly about making their data open. So we are seeing definitely that the students are feeling empowered to be able to take forward very positive, virtuous behaviors in their microtasking.
So another thing that I want to add is that these, let's say, ethical exercises are also very useful for us, for me and Louise, in the sense that so we also are trying to think about these micro ethics also through the lens of the capability approach, and we think about like what are, let's say, the conversion factors, the resources that all these students need, or these researchers, let's say, need to flourish as researchers in this open science or open data type of environment. And clearly, maybe we kind of, let's say, don't know exactly which are the barriers or which are these conversion factors that are very useful for them, let's say, to become to flourish as researchers. And so by also engaging in this ethical exercise, we can, let's say, learn a lot about the institutional barriers and the material barriers. I mean, Louise knows already a lot because she did a lot of research on that in the past, especially in the so-called, let's say, digital divide. But it's nonetheless like also very, very, very useful and very helpful for us to understand in general, like the data science environment, not just in let's say, in so-called, let's say, developed countries that have a lot of resources.
Brilliant, thank you. We have a few more minutes. Does anybody have any questions? To Mark, do you have any guides to your process for designing and delivering ethics content that others could reference? Folks at MyU are considering approaches to embed ethics in courses, and I'd love to be able to draw on what you've learned. That's to Mark.
Thanks, Daniel. That was a good question. Thanks, Eric, for facilitating. Well, to be honest, the interesting part is we basically hit the ground running. Guides wise, so what we do is basically just a rough outline of what we do. We just identify key topics. Well, a case study would work really well. For example, let's say the difference between data science versus HCI. HCI would probably be something along the lines of things like deployment of apps and the user experience, or even things like social media. We can just use the Twitter example, versus again data science, things like algorithmic bias in hiring systems that discriminate against certain genders. We start with that case study in mind, have a chat with the unit coordinator or the professor in charge of that unit, see if that case study would relate to what the students have learned, then we just work backwards from there. And yep, pretty much we hit the ground running. That's the rough outline of how the whole thing started for each unit. And then pretty much we just see how the students react to the material, and the Q&A will lead us to if we need to follow up with the students, or for example, if let's say it hasn't happened yet, if the students require more guidance in specific ethical concepts, what Luis and Manuel mentioned, let's say version control, inaccessibility of others to the same version control repository due to let's say firewalls, etc. Can we just use that example of ethical considerations in their own work, and how do we help them navigate their own projects or their own capstones? So happy to have a chat offline if you have some ideas of what you want to implement, and maybe we just brainstorm stuff. Daniel, I hope this short answer suffices in this short amount of time.
And thank you. Just be real quick before Brooke, you can ask your question. Raquel put in the chat, but it was just a panelist, so I expanded on it. So an invitation to take part in the Ethics in Action Art or App Design Challenge. So that's from Raquel. I mean, it's from me, but I'm copying Raquel's earnest invitation.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Brooke, you have something?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the presentations, and I mean it challenges us all to go into the into various ways of getting the notion that people are going to confront ethical issues, and they need to come up with ways of dealing with them. And I know I like the idea of resilience and the way that Mark was pulling cases out of different instructors' experience with talking with their own students. I just wondered if people are familiar with the work that the Ethics and Compliance Institute initiative has done in the United States with the business ethics survey that they do every 2 years. And they're very much interested as they ask individual employees in these companies what kinds of ethical challenges they've run across. They're very interested in developing ways and have a lot of documentation available for free for people to go and look at as to what sorts of institutional solutions companies could put in to their organization to make sure that individuals don't get caught in these kinds of ethical dilemmas with, but because they have a bad boss or a boss who's unfamiliar with, with the policies or whatever. And that rather than having to rely just on individual resilience, there are also ways of trying to encourage your organization to provide more that people can deal with being in ethically challenging positions. And the other thing would be Mary Gentili's Give Voice to Values material, which is also available. There are videos on the University of Texas McComb Center, Ethics Center website that talk about specifically research-based ways that individuals can realize, 1, they're not alone, 2, they can find allies, 3, they could practice doing what they're going to say before they actually go talk to their boss about the fact that they're having to deal with this individual ethics problem and all. And it just seems to me that if we're willing to make the distinction for them between what do I do as an individual, and here are some good tactics for that, you know, also what do I do in terms of trying to get my institution to set up ways for me to deal with this, you know, that there'll be an ethics officer I could appeal to, or that, you know, or that there'll be training, or that, you know, whatever. But I mean, it just seems, and I was wondering if both of the teams could respond in terms of how much, in terms of resilience, are they getting feedback from the participants that are talking about institutional solutions as well as as ways they as individuals can deal with these problems.
Just real quickly before the groups go, I just want to say that technically our time is up.
Sorry.
I'm happy to stay and chat.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
way
fine.
too
I
long
just
a
I wanted to
time.
say
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Kelly, is there anything we need to tell people if people have to drop off? So I'm happy to stay on if people are and hear the answers, but I just want to do that before people run off. I mean, it's the same link. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 9 o'clock Central, right?
9 o'clock Central, yeah, same link, and we'll send out a reminder an hour before.
Yep. All right.
Kelly, it is the Eventbrite is the participation closed, or if people want to join for tomorrow, are there additional?
We can open that up again for if new people want to join. That's not a problem.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
All right. So I'll turn it over to if anybody wants to answer Brooke's question about the resources and resilience that you've observed or maybe not observed. Or not.
Yeah, fine. It's been a wonderful morning and afternoon. Thank you.
Brooke, I can add, I know the Giving Voice to Values module is actually being adapted for use in engineering classes. There's a collaboration between I think is it Mary Gentile who does this, and Rosalind Byrne at the University of Virginia via the Online Ethics Center. So those modules should be live, I think, by the end of the summer. So
wonderful.
It's quite exciting. There's a couple really good things coming out of that.
Yeah, that's great.
Brilliant. So maybe on that note, we'll let Mark start his day while the rest of us go have dinner or something in a little while. Thanks, everybody. That was a great panel. Honestly, the talks were fantastic. It's really interesting to hear what everybody's doing, and I appreciate you all taking the time. And hopefully we'll see many of you tomorrow, or at least see your names.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.